Good evening. I'd like to call to order a regular meeting of the Board of Education of Goshen Central School District tonight, Monday, November 7th at 6:30 PM in the District Administration Building, and tonight's meeting is live streamed through YouTube. Next on the agenda is Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of meditation. Next on the agenda is privilege of the floor. Persons wishing to speak should first be recognized by the president, then identify themselves. Any group or organization wishing to address the board must identify a single spokesperson. Comments shall be brief and concise, generally not exceeding 2 minutes in length per speaker, which may be extended at the discretion of the board president. Speakers may comment on matters related to district business only. The board will not permit in public sessions discussions involving individual district personnel or students. Persons wishing to discuss matters involving individual district personnel or students should present their comments and/or concerns to the superintendent during regular business hours. All speakers are to conduct themselves in a civil manner. Obscene language, libelous statements, threats of violence, statements advocating racial, religious, or other forms of prejudice will not be tolerated. We have the privilege of the floor sign-up sheet. First on the sign-up sheet is Carrie, and I hope I'm pronouncing it right, Laviano. Am I saying it right? Okay, Carrie. We do have a podium.
Okay. So can I just ask a question first? Since I'm going to come up and make a couple comments and a couple questions, how does the follow-up happen? Like, do you email me? Like, does it get discussed at the next board? I was just curious on the process.
Basically, privilege of the floor is for public information for you to speak openly. There typically is not a response in this open forum. If it is something that we feel that can warrant a very quick response, and instead of it, going on for a long period of time, we could do that. But depending on what the subject matter is, it would then filter through to the correct parties within the district.
Okay.
And then be handled that way. And then there are times where we will then take a look at whatever the subject matter is, and generally speaking, we could address it at the next board meeting. So it depends on the subject matter.
But ultimately, somebody would then follow up.
Yes,
with
absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, so first I'm going to apologize because I really wanted to be at the last meeting, but there was a conflict. So a lot of this stuff is something I would have said at the last meeting. So the hold in place that happened the first time with the high school, that day, sports activities were continued, but we put the homecoming, if I'm remembering this correct, the homecoming was postponed. So my question was, if homecoming was postponed, I felt like that day, there was a lot that just happened, and then we continued on with sports and we postponed homecoming. But we didn't postpone the 7th, 8th grade dance that was happening that Friday night, hence the second issue that happened at the middle school, that there was the next airdrop. And I just feel like, as a parent, if we postpone the high school, why wouldn't we have postponed the middle school? I feel like there was lack of consistency between the buildings. So that was one issue that I had. A second issue, the last hold in place happened when only the high school and the middle school were in session. And I'm questioning the, school policy. If the high school was in a hold in place, why wouldn't the middle school been hold in place? I know that they knew of the student, I think from what I read. But again, there could have been a copycat potentially maybe at the middle school, because kids knew before we knew of the hold in place. So everybody seems to communicate way much faster than information is let out. And I'm not faulting anybody by that, but I'm just saying, like, my son sent me a message to let me know that there was a hold in place did I know why? And I didn't at that point. So I'm looking for an understanding of what the policy is between buildings, because I feel like if one school is a hold in place, my thinking would be then the middle school should have been a hold in place. And I know the elementary schools weren't in session at that point. To going back to the hold in place, I'm kind of jumping all over the board, so I apologize. These kids, I think, are so desensitized from this right now. Like, it's almost like it's a joke. And I realize it's not, but I'm so fearful that, God forbid, something does happen seriously. These kids are not going to be prepared for it because they're so used to this hold in place, or this happened, or was it an overdose? Was it a threat? And I don't know. I don't know if our code of conduct needs to be looked at, that the repercussions need to be more serious so that people don't think that it's a joke and kids don't do this and follow these. If in fact it was a TikTok challenge, I don't know. I'm looking to get to the bottom of this so that these kids are in school for their education, that time is not being taken away from them, and that it's not looked upon by a joke and it's not happening in other buildings. And lastly, because I know I'm on a time crunch here, is I think in general, just this, like, it just goes back to kids being desensitized, those that it does affect. I mean, there is like an emotional piece of this for kids. I mean, we're talking, between the middle school and the high school, you have potentially 11-year-olds to, 18-year-olds. And it's a very different on how they're able to process the information. And I just want those kids that need help to get help, and those kids who are struggling because of this, it should be addressed for them. That's pretty much all I have.
I mean, again, normally I don't respond, but as a parent, I think that we all are in agreement that it's scary. It's very scary. And I can tell you wholeheartedly that I do believe that our admins and our local police force are doing everything that they can. We do have a safety meeting this week, another safety meeting. We continuously have safety meetings to look over the protocols and review how can we make it better, the response time. I see that Dr. Coates is taking notes as you are speaking, just to make sure and probably to review it with the safety committee. So we are absolutely doing what we can. I don't know if Dr. Coates at this point has anything that he'd like to add, but believe me, we take it very seriously, and we are on a daily basis taking a look at what we can do.
And you and I have spoken before, and I'll make sure that I follow up, in a phone call or an email so that we can communicate about the concerns that you brought to the table. There's some individualized information that I think warrants a follow-up conversation with us together, so I can share that. But know that when we tabletop these exercises, when we look specifically at things like communication, I wish I could tell you that there was one clear-cut metric that would carve through all of these individual circumstances, but each one that happens has individual nuances to it that there's not a clear-cut measure that's going to carve through each one of them to say, in this instance, this will always happen. We look at the facts that we know at any given time to be able to make those decisions. But again, like I said a moment ago, I think it's merited for us to have some follow-up conversation, because we could probably go for a long time just to talk about what we knew and how we made the decisions to get through the last couple circumstances that we've dealt with here in the district.
Thank you. Next on privilege of the floor, I have Danielle Mancuso.
Hello, everyone. I basically just kind of want to piggyback on what Carrie Laviano said. I agree with basically everything that she said. My question more so is there a committee? Is there something being done where we can get together as an administration, maybe have teacher, faculty, students, parents to sit down and actually come up with a plan together that everybody kind of feels is addressing their concerns? I feel like it's November, close to December at this point. It feels like it's right around the corner, but I don't feel like there's any consistency, there isn't enough transparency. I feel like when things happen, I learn about it more so from parents, from Facebook, you know, it's from Goshen moms groups. I hear about things that are going on in my child's school from there before I hear about it from the administration. And I understand that there's protocols and ongoing investigations and all of that, and I get it. But maybe there needs to be somebody who's delegated to kind of give us that information up front so that we're not hearing 1,000 different stories from 1,000 different people. My own son, you know, is texting me from his classroom saying, we're in a hold in place. Do you know what happened? I'm waiting to see, is there an ambulance outside? Is it an overdose? Are we in trouble? Is something gonna happen? You know, these kids are scared. And then on the other side, they're saying, oh, here we go again, it's happening again, you know, and they don't know what's going on. I don't know what the protocol is inside the building for children. I don't know, I would imagine if there was an active shooter, no one's getting on a loudspeaker and saying there's an active shooter, but I feel like the kids don't really know what's happening. They don't know how to feel about it. And then, you know, they're stuck in a classroom for however long, waiting for it to be over, and then coming home with their own set of stories and rumors that they heard. And it doesn't help the child who actually, you know, did this, the child who clearly maybe struggling with something that makes a child, you know, airdrop a message like that, or send a tweet or text or whatever it is that they're doing, you know? So it doesn't help that child who's actually struggling enough to do this. And then it doesn't help the children who are stuck behind closed doors, panic-stricken, and then coming home to parents who heard a whole different story. I just feel like there needs to be some better way to communicate all of this stuff. And then collectively, we have to make a plan on how to combat it, how to make it better. I mean, I'm a kid who grew up, when I was a kid, I grew up in Brooklyn, and I went to high school with metal detectors. You know, our bags went through x-ray machines, and maybe that's where we're at. It sounds crazy for a small town, but maybe that's enough to scare a child to not want to threaten gun violence, you know? Maybe having canine dogs just kind of patrol. I know that they have other things to do, but maybe when they're not doing something, they could kind of just have a presence outside the school, just so kids think, maybe I can't put that edible or that drug in my pocket, you know? Maybe there needs to just be some out-of-the-box thinking, some way to make a difference, to change it, so that other towns are not talking about Goshen as the town that has the problem, but maybe as the town that came up with a different kind of solution. So that's what I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Next on the list, Rachel Lucy.
Hi, I'm Rachel Lucy. I just wanted to piggyback off of that. I have 2 children at GIS. All of our buildings are very close and walkable. So anything that's happening at any building, I would appreciate as a parent to know, just in case it was a very serious incident happening, that I'm aware. So I know if I have to get my kids, if I need to be on call in case something is going to happen. So I just would appreciate more communication for something if it's in one building, not to get a text from a parent, but just parents across the board for all buildings. But I came here on a happier note. I am an OM coach for 2 teams, Odyssey of the Mind. Last month, both of my teams went on a field trip. We walked up to the high school shop room. Beth helped arrange a tour with both of the high school shop teachers. My team had an enormous opportunity to just see the tools that the high school students get to use and ask questions of what tool you use for what material, plus the fact that they got to walk through the high school set of Clue to see how things are constructed. This past Friday, we all went to see the high school production of Clue, and it was phenomenal. So if you didn't see it, you totally missed out. It was such an amazing experience for my team to see it come full circle. And I want to thank the board for supporting the art programs in our school district, because they're very important, because you never know what it might lead to. So with that, I'd also invite the board to our regional competition of Odyssey of the Mind. It will be Saturday, March 4th at Bosie's in Goshen, to watch all the Goshen OM teams compete. We have teams from every building. Thank you.
Next on the agenda is the president's report. I have on my list the election of vice president of the Board of Education and the oath of office. I need a motion. Billy, who would you like to nominate? Anyone second? Shannon second? Any other motions or nominees? No? All in favor? Opposed? Okay. Brett, congratulations. And then Maureen has your.
I, Brett Wheaton, do solemnly swear that I'll support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York, and that I'll faithfully discharge the duties of the Board of Education Vice President, according to the best of my ability. Signing it now. Thank you.
Congratulations again.
Thank you.
Next on my report is filling of the board member vacancy. At this point, we've talked with legal counsel, and the board can choose to either not fill the position, we can appoint someone, or we can ask for applications from the community. And if we do go the route of asking for applications, it would be in an open forum. It would be with the community present, and then we would invite anyone who has expressed interest to come and meet the board, and an opportunity for the board to ask questions. So I would like to go around the room and see what your thoughts are, pros and cons, ideas. And then, if we feel that we could vote on this, great. If not, then we'll add another meeting so that we could take the opportunity to vote. Okay? And I'll just start at this side. Billy?
Thank you. Personally, I think we should open it up to invite some applications in. This would just be to the completion of the term, which would be through the end of the year, correct? So I think it would be a great idea to fill the seat because we still have 8-9 months left of the year. I think having that ability for people who are interested to apply and put an application in would definitely be the best route, in my opinion.
Shannon?
I agree with Billy. I think for anyone who is thinking about putting in an application, I would stress, though, that it not be something to just dabble in. It'd be something that you want to pursue this, like running in the election. So to me, that's just something for anyone who wants to apply to just keep in mind. I'm definitely for people putting in applications, but just keep in mind, it would not be to just try it out and see how it goes. The idea would be that you are anticipating that you'd want to run for May, just so, you don't get vested and then you don't want to do it. Obviously, people's feelings can change, but that would be the idea for me.
Okay, thank you. Tom?
All right, I think we're going in the right direction already. I actually agree with both of those sentiments. Leaving the seat empty, I don't doubt that we ever would struggle to make a decision, but another person to just really be here to vet out some tough decisions, more folks to volunteer on some of the committees, to put in that good work, I think makes the most sense. So having an open invite for applications, if you're out there listening at home and you'd like to put in an application, just Shannon said it pretty well, just, wholeheartedly come on board. We'd love to hear from whoever's interested to be on the board. And you know, have an interview process. I think that's definitely the way to go. Sure.
Thanks, Tom.
I would echo the same sentiments as far as having applications to the board. I've had some other thoughts as well, to be honest, that there was some people that did express interest. There was someone, Carl Alfier, there was only 6 votes off, and the public did speak by casting a vote at that point, and she did put an effort already in place. But as the rest of the board votes that we want to take applications, then I support that. But we do believe we do have a public has already spoken somewhat.
I'll tell you kind of how my thought process went with this. I have pros and cons for a couple of different things. Initially, I was thinking about not filling it. And I know that I'm alone in that. My thought being that I feel that the community, as we have done in the past, votes on the position. It gives the individual the chance to let the community know who they are, and then the community would vote. So, but that does in fact leave us with a vacancy and with 6 people on the board. So I recognize that fact too. But again, I keep thinking that the community should have their say. But I do understand that there is merit in filling the position. And by doing it in a public forum and by accepting the applications, the public can see who is interested. They can kind of see our thought process. They can hear the questions that we're asking and the answers, and then we can take it from there. So I'm perfectly fine if, we thought that we could go to a vote tonight, and that, whatever the majority would be, I'm fine in supporting that.
That's kind of some of the difficulty that I had with my statement, because the public did at least vote previously. Past this is just going to be us voting. So that's a little bit of my difficulty, that we had someone that was only 6 votes off of you, and the public did speak. So it's kind of hard for me now at this point to go against what they already spoke to once, and to then say that this is solely in my hands of people that's going to give applications. I feel she's the best position for it at this point, to fill that position.
So you'd rather lean towards appointing as opposed to opening applications then?
I would, only because the public did speak. I mean, that's not me, that's,
There's something to
and it
commend
was
about
so
that.
close, only 6 votes.
I mean, anybody who has come forward, put in the time, the application, the energy, to say, I want to do this and serve the community, they deserve to be commended for that, no matter who's sitting here now. So I think there's a lot of value in that point. Have you thought any further, Allison, or I guess anyone, about if it was an open application process, what that process might look like in terms of a timeline, or how that would operate? Have we, as a district, maybe it's a question for Maureen, ever been in this position before where we've had to say, tell us about yourself and why you want to do it? What do we know what that might look like?
Well, we do, and I was remiss in saying, we do have until December 31st to appoint someone, if that's the case, or we could choose not to fill the vacancy, but our timeline is December 31st. It's my understanding that once we could put it out there and say that we're accepting applications, we could do a week to 2 weeks to accept the applications, and then we would have to conduct those interviews, I would imagine, on one evening, and then make our decision from there. It's a tight timeline, especially with the holidays too. So, and we don't know how many applicants we would receive. So also the timeline could vary based on how many people respond. If you have 20 applicants as opposed to 2.
And how long would the application process be open?
I think that we had talked about like 1 week to 2 weeks, tops, I would think. Obviously, we have to publicize it and communicate it and make sure people.
Right, have the opportunity to put in for it. Makes sense.
And then we're going to try to interpret what we believe the public vote would be. And I know I'm a broken record, but when we had a public vote. So.
I do also believe that we have all, and nothing against Carla, she might be the best candidate out there. I would also like to say, we have all been, the faith has been put in all of our hands as well. So I do believe that the community chose us for a reason, and they trust us in making these decisions. They trust us making decisions every 2 weeks. And I think that they would see, as long as we have a strict process, one that's clear, and everyone is following the same thing. I think that as long as we're transparent about the process, we should be good.
I agree. I think transparency in the process is really important. And I think that's a good point you made. You know, the folks, everybody's sitting here today because they won the trust of the community at the time that they ran for the board. But I do think process and transparency is really important in the matter. Someone said something about an application process. I think the one thing that I find unique in this matter is there were 4 candidates who ended up running in the previous election. And again, I do commend anybody who chose to go out there and make it happen and put their time and their effort forward. It would be unfortunate if there was another candidate who has been wanting to run for the board, who didn't have an opportunity just because of the timeline. And they may be in a position now where they actually may already be planning to run in the next election, you know, when there's an open seat. I'm not sure if someone's seat opens next year. I'm not sure, but.
Well, the vacancy,
Right. So next year
whoever's
there,
appointed right now is just
No,
until
but
the
I
end
mean,
of the
and
year.
then-
And then there's the one position,
and then there'll be
and then-
one more vacancy also?
potentially. I mean, a term is up.
Oh, so that being said, you know, it would be great to see, you know, if that candidate, someone who was thinking about it already, had an opportunity to say, you know what, hey, I'm here, I have been thinking about it as well. The timing didn't work out, so I think that definitely benefits in the application process as well, which helps us to, you know, kind of get a pool of names.
Does anyone need more time to think about this and we can add another meeting on, or do you want to go to a vote?
In all honesty, I think that we've had, you know, individually, we've had time to kind of mull it over. 3 weeks since the last meeting, a couple weeks prior to that. Again, in my opinion, I think that the sooner that we could vote on this and move forward, especially if it's going to be an application process, the better. The sooner we could have someone in here, the sooner we can start, get them acclimated, go through their trainings and so forth.
So I guess we can go around and say yay or nay, those that are supporting an application process.
Yay.
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 Nay.
I'll have to say yay. Okay. Yes. Thank you. Next on the agenda is the legislative update. Oxba? Tom? Hi, Michael.
All right. The most recent Oxbow meeting, we had a presentation from a representative from NISBA, Director of Leadership Development. This is my 3rd Oxbow meeting now, and honestly, there is a lot of really good information that comes up at these meetings. And Karen does a nice job of, you know, sending out who that guest speaker is. So even though I am our delegate here, I think, you know, everyone's welcome. And I just say that because, you know, Allison actually showed up to this last meeting, and it was,
You make it sound like a surprise.
well, you know, I've only been to a couple so far. You've probably been to a lot more. But it was actually nice having you there. And, you know, there was a lot of really good thoughts that came up regarding board management and leadership, and almost more so from that president's seat. So, you know, that was a really great presentation. And again, lots of resources available if we ever want to bring anybody in and do some additional board training. And I'm glad that you recommended that, Allison. I think that's a nice idea. additional leadership training wherever we can get it. After that presentation had concluded, there are a few more updates and announcements. There was a quick overview of the NISBA annual convention and some of the things that happened over there with some meeting updates. BOCES actually did inform all of the component districts that they'll be doing a tabletop active shooter drill as well, and that they'd be sending out some information regarding that. You'll probably get it, Allison. Dr. Coates, you'll probably get it as well. And they invited us to go there and join that presentation with Sheriff's Department, State Police, Building Safety, and essentially what they'll do is they'll run through an active shooter drill, tabletop discussions, what went well, what didn't go well, and that'll be happening this month over at BOCES, and members of the board are welcome to attend. They should be sending more information on that. And then other than that, just a couple of other informal updates, and Bill Hecht actually announced his retirement at that meeting as well, so he'll be wrapping up at the end of the year. And those are all the updates from that meeting.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Next on the agenda is the superintendent's report. Dr. Curtis Coates.
Thank you, Mrs. Solty. So tomorrow is our fall superintendent's conference day, and we have a full schedule of training and facilitation throughout the district going on, starting in Scotchtown, and we have some vertical articulation going on between both Scotchtown and GIS, with training in our reading program and foundations, our writing A to Z training program, also in our multi-tiered system of support exploration with Tier 1 resources between both buildings as well. Then with technology, we also have pieces going on with Nearpod training and with eSpark and Happy Numbers as well at the elementary level. At the secondary level, we'll be doing some additional work on our guidance plan that we redid last year to make sure that we're following the updates that we put into place. We'll also be working on MTSS, again, the multi-tiered system of supports for both the middle school and the high school as well. Our PPS department will be working on looking at evaluations for students with reading disabilities. We'll also be working on some training at the secondary level for students with executive functioning skill issues. We have our health and physical education teachers able to attend the Catskill Zone Regional AFERD Conference that will be happening in Minisink Valley. And then the active shooter training that Mr. Loftus was referencing will be happening starting at the 911 building tomorrow. And then the end of that training and demonstration will be transitioning over to the Gibson Road campus. And we have administrators from every level throughout the district that will be in attendance, in addition to Mr. Carter and myself tomorrow. So there is a full day planned for our superintendent's conference day. We've asked all of our staff members, and as we sent out the agenda last week, to ground the work that we do in the two strategic goals that we worked on last year with our stakeholder groups. Those two goals being to strengthen and facilitate a safe, respectful, and engaging school community in which all students have voice, choice, and support in their personal, academic, and career development. And then more heavily on this conference day will be our second goal, to design and implement a comprehensive and aligned K-12 path to help each student succeed academically and achieve a strong sense of personal wellness. So again, the strategic planning work that we started last year will be reflective in a lot of the conference day work that will be happening this year. I'd like to take a moment and congratulate Mr. Quinlan, who's here with us tonight, Mrs. Scully. It was brought up that the production of Clue went on this past weekend, and I was able to attend on Saturday, and I couldn't agree more, Ms. Losi. What a wonderful time to see our students demonstrate their abilities outside of the regular classroom. Well done. I know it's a lot of work that goes in, but to see the fun that the students and all the volunteers have together to put on such a quality production, thank you for all of your efforts, along with Mrs. Scully. As we talked about earlier, we will be holding another Board of Education Safety Committee, as we did earlier this year, to run through all of the events that have occurred over the past several weeks. We'll be looking at our protocols. We'll be discussing things like our communication protocols, what can get communicated when, how we communicate that information at the same time. In attendance, we have board member representatives for the safety committee team, but we also have our teacher representatives, we have administrative representatives, and law enforcement comes at the same time to be a part of that conversation. And again, all of the notes I've taken from the comments from our community members tonight, we will make sure that we review that when we meet on Wednesday of this week. Lastly, I wanted to give the board an update on the progress regarding our capital improvement project that will be occurring at Scotchtown Avenue Elementary School. In your packet is a recent update, actually from this morning, that I received from Matt Milnemow regarding the design work that's going on for submission to SED. The most up-to-date information is in regards to the roofing. As you see, we shifted some of the work from the HVAC side over to the roofing side, simply because we will be putting some of the new equipment on the roof. And for approval from SED, Matt felt it was more appropriate to have that place there, which resulted in a small uptick on the budget on the roofing side. Again, that will be a deduct on the other side, hopefully on the HVAC side. One of the things that we will be watching very closely that he makes reference to in the communication that I shared with you is some cost escalation that we're seeing already. Again, we are still within budget, even with the escalation that we have into the budget for roofing, but we're going to have to watch that very closely. But we are well into the design phase and just about ready to be able to submit to SED. Also parallel to that is a lot of the HVAC work and the HVAC design that is occurring. I had an opportunity to speak with Mr. Freeze before the meeting tonight, and he has informed me that Gerard is regularly on campus surveying the building to make sure that they're making well-informed decisions about the design and all of the work that we have asked them to do. Matt expresses some optimism in the communication that he gave us tonight about the direction that we seem to be headed. Again, just to refresh the board, we had made the decision for the equipment that we were going to buy off the cooperative bid list that will speed up the work and allow us to be able to procure the materials next summer so that we can access the federal dollars that we have available to us to make sure that we can use those monies to appropriate towards this work. It is likely once the plan is fully designed that we will have to make some discretionary decisions about what work can and cannot be included. Again, we asked for quite a bit from Lan and Gerard, but from all intents and purposes, from what Matt shared with me today, the design seems to be headed in a good direction, and some of the extras that we asked for will certainly be a possibility for us to be able to include in this project. If you take a look at the time schedule, the project schedule, really not much has changed there. We are on pace to be able to have the project up to SED by the middle of December. That would get us into our review phase somewhere, hopefully to be completely done by the beginning of March, and to be able to hit our timeline to get the bids out on the street, to be able to get the work done during next summer, and hopefully in the early fall be completely done with the work at Scotchtown. So again, I just wanted to give you a status update on where this stood and how the project seems to be progressing. And at this point, we are in a good place and progressing satisfactorily. And that's going to be it for me tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Coates. Next on the agenda is the Assistant Superintendent for Business Report. Ms. Lamarand is not here this evening, so Dr. Coates.
Thank you. So the first item you will see on your agenda for tonight, an action item to approve the corrective action plan for the New York State Comptroller's audit report. Earlier in the year, we had a mini audit, and it focused particularly on mental health training for staff, mandated mental health training. The mini audit requires is still required to go before the board for approval, and also for us to send all of the final documentation up to Albany. After the approval by the board tonight, we'll be closing that out, and that will be done. The one thing that I want to point out to the board, even though this is a mini audit, the full comptroller's audit, we are still up in our 5-year cycle. So it is likely that probably before the end of this fiscal year, we will be somewhere in the rotation to receive a full comptroller's audit. Again, the mini audit did not circumvent that requirement. So I expect probably before the end of the school year to be notified by the comptroller's office of a pending full audit. And again, there's a 5-year cycle. COVID disrupted that modestly, but I do expect that that's coming. The other item under the business office report for this evening, there was a question at the last meeting regarding the Legoland pilot and where that stands. The Legoland pilot is designed on a prorated amount, if you will, of the assessed value of the property. Essentially, it goes up 5/100ths of a point each year to increase the amount that the pilot is being paid to all of the municipalities under the pilot agreement, the school district being one of them. So just to give you concrete numbers, for the 21-22 year, the taxable valuation of the Legoland property was $4,906,625, with a pilot due to the school of $187,918.34. And then for this year, the 22-23 taxable valuation was $11,312,200, with a substantial increase for the pilot payment of $411,610,01. Just as a reminder, this is probably one of the longest pilots that the Orange County Development Organization has put out. This is a 20-year pilot. So again, that incremental growth is key, but the other piece is as Legoland continues to develop the property, what that means fiscally and financially for us moving forward. It's really the value of the property up to and leading to the end of the pilot. Obviously, we'll have to be careful once we get to the end of the pilot, what that means, because often what we see when this happens, organizations will then grieve the assessed value, which can leave a huge negative balance for municipal services to have to cover. And we've found ourselves in that position with the mall in that not too distant future. It was a pretty hefty price tag that the district had to cover. So we'll have to watch this carefully as we get closer to the end of the pilot, but that is many years down the road at this point.
Thank you, Dr. Coates. Next on the agenda is Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum, Instruction, Personnel, and Technology Report, Jason Carter.
Thank you, Mrs. Salty. Good evening, everyone. So as you heard, we had 3 weeks since our last board meeting. I did want to take the time to mention that we had our National Junior Honor Society induction on October 21st at the C.J. Hooker Middle School. We were very fortunate to have 80 students inducted into the National Junior Honor Society. We're very proud of those students. It's no easy task, in my opinion. Students are required to have at least a 90% grade point average at the end of 4th marking period in 7th grade. So certainly a good academic accomplishment. Again, we're very proud of those students, and I also wanted to take a moment to thank Ms. Carmen and her faculty council. They did a wonderful job. It was a beautiful ceremony, and it was well attended. This evening, we have 2 gentlemen from Goshen High School. We have Mr. Joe Fedor and Mr. Dylan Johnson with us. We brought them in just to put on a nice STEAM lab show for you. The reason that we have them here, we realized that as we went through with the STEAM lab, what a wonderful construction project, but unless you've spent time in the lab, unless you've actually seen everything that goes into using the equipment and what the equipment can actually do, many people, they don't really have a thorough understanding of the courses that we brought in, with the way that we've expanded the catalog, and what our students are doing on a daily basis. So you will see a great PowerPoint presentation, and I don't want to steal the thunder from these 2 gentlemen. However, I do want you to know that we did go through a great process in bringing in a CTE pathway in cybersecurity and computer technologies. So it is a 4+1 pathway that we're very proud of. And with that is a personal finance component and also a career internship. So just taking into consideration those 2 pieces, we have 145 students involved in just those 2 components right now. So it does go a little beyond that portion of the pathway, but it is certainly a very well attended course. We've got 2 instructors that are doing a great job, one of which went to Syracuse University for the proper training. So there is a lot of professional development that goes into offering this program as well. In addition, you'll see that we have Discovering Computer Science. We have 2 Sienna courses. We have Python and multimedia and Java and multimedia. Again, very well attended as a part of the pathway. And then in addition to that, in Advanced Woods, but we offer design and drawing for production, computer integrated manufacturing, and robotics, all of which you can see here this evening, except for, I believe, some of the Advanced Woods. So at this point in time, although I don't have a non-duplicated count, we have 288 students involved in all of the program offerings in the STEAM lab, which I think is a phenomenal number. We really look forward to the future. We look forward to more growth. Of course, that will involve more professional development as we continue to send Dylan Johnson and potentially new teachers in the future for more training at Syracuse. Right now, we're looking at cybersecurity training so that we can continue to grow this portion of the actual CTE program, the actual pathway. So again, we look forward to doing that in the near future, hopefully this summer. And additionally, the drones that we've spoken of, we're getting in more advanced drones that I know Dylan and Joe will be able to talk about and address with our future plans for the actual drone curriculum. So without further delay, turn the presentation here over to Mr. Fedor and Mr. Dylan Johnson.
I think John's, sorry. It's all right, sir. Right, so little thing up there, this is just what we offer. So I teach all of our computer science, that's Discovering Computer Science, which is an intro level. Then we have Python, which is a 110 level course from Siena. The students can get 3 college credits from that. Then I teach Java, which is a 4 college credit from Siena. Then I also teach robotics, and this year, luckily, I get to teach SIM, which is computer integrated manufacturing.
Oh, and then, so I end up pulling my weight on the drawing and design for production, materials processing, both of those. And that's pretty much how it lays out because there's been so much demand for us. We're actually teaching overages right now just to try to get as many people in as we possibly can. It's exhausting, but we think it's worth it. We spend a lot of time working on problem solving and critical thinking skills. So this is just a little snapshot of what we do, but it's really so much more than what is sitting in this room. And we also are involved, like get the kids involved in some clubs. So, gosh, between those clubs, there's another 60 kids doing something at least after school. So we're proud of it. We'd like to grow it more. We have drones coming next. And how about the next slide? We'll see where we're going from here.
Yeah, so in that, so Syracuse University, right, Project Advanced, so that is a cybersecurity course. I believe there's college credit attached to it. I'm not totally sure about the amount and things like that. With that, that will be the final computer science related course that the students would take for that CTLE pathway. And then upon completing that, they have to actually take like a certification test, which I have not decided which one. There's like a bunch that we can choose from. I'm just trying to go through and see which one best fits them so that we can have more students succeed with this. So that's, that will be determined by probably the end of this school year, because next year will be our first class of students that will actually be able to complete the pathway.
And we left one thing off in the drone course. There also is a piece for preparing. So they build them, they code them to fly wherever Python tells them to go.
Yep, so it kind of ties in with the rest of what we're doing. So the coding language that we'll use with it is a main staple in one of our whole classes. It's Python based. And then we also get the hands-on experience because they'll have to build, repair. They'll have to do certain things, like they'll be given certain tasks. They have to complete them in a certain amount of time and in a certain way. So it's really cool. You know, we're building up to that. So what students do? So it's actually funny. We gave this to our students today, like, hey, any feedback that we can change? And they're like, well, why does it say what students do? And then there's a picture of you. So we ran into a little bit of thing. I was starting to get some student work, and you know, students, they love to just take images offline. So I wasn't too sure about like copyright and everything. Luckily, one of my students thought it would be funny to take my school profile picture and make changes to it. So that's why that's up there. The students did do that. So this is actually Python. It's all media based, and they actually learn how to alter images like this with code. They alter sounds, produce sounds, and then they also do animations like GIFs and stuff like that through this. And these are just a couple of snapshots of that. Here, so the middle portion, like the drawing, the very colorful stuff, that is our intro level, discovering computer science. They actually have to track like that top middle, the big one. They track the mouse, and based on where it is in the screen, it'll be a different color, and things like that. The robot arm, which you guys will see in a little bit, we do that in robotics. So they 3D print that, they have to build it, they have to wire it, and then they have to code it to do tasks. Last year, it was this purple one. They actually have to like pick up a ball, move it, which I thought was really cool. It was challenging, but this year I wanted to just take it that extra step. So this year, each group is determining exactly what they want to do. So whether it be like draw the Goshen gladiator head, or draw their names, or play tic-tac-toe, or something like that, just to, you know, take that extra step forward.
And we actually have one of the arms printing that they were working on, just to kind of show you what it looks like when they do a print.
Again, more examples. So we have some woodworking, right? So that was like kind of I would say, I think we called it the cutting board challenge, but they really just kind of took it and did a bunch of different things. You know, what DDP offers is that like collapsible fork. Mr. Fedor did something for the class of 2020.
Sure, there was a chair from last year's advanced wood class. And let's see, there's too much to list. There really just is. There's always a project, and everything is constantly changing. You guys should come and see for yourselves one day, and we'll certainly come back again. But moving on, Mr. Redeker. Oh,
It's gonna take a second.
you might recognize that table.
So we have got 3 videos. So that is actually what this is right here. We actually have what it cut. Ignore the sound, it's terrible. That is the premise behind the robot arm. So they actually use this first. They learn about it. The cool thing about this is it's actually got artificial intelligence in it, so you can teach it and you can train it by moving it to show it how to properly do something. But then you also have the coding side on the laptop to actually tell it to do a certain thing.
Sure, and it has removable heads.
Yeah, so it can
That's a
3D
different thing.
print,
So right
suction
now,
cup.
that is the laser head, so we won't show you that here because it's a little bright. We don't have a bunch of glasses for you. But it is it's a 3-axis just like these, so it's a nice introduction.
Then we have the plasma cutter. That's the video that's running right now that cuts metal, CNC. I don't know what that's cutting. What is that cutting right now?
That
Yeah, I
might
don't
have been one of
remember
their logos. I make the sim class typically. So that could have been one of those, but it's a little bit, at least everybody loves that one.
And this is also from the sim class. This is just them. They were drawing their initials, right?
Yeah, it was just working as a writing implement.
So this, again, we
We're gonna-
kind of talked about all
Yeah,
this.
we'll probably breeze through these, but it's just a couple bullets about what happens in each class and kind of what it's meant to achieve. So, you know, these in DDP, we spent a lot of time working, drawing 3-dimensional models, because if they want to use any of that fancy equipment, they need to be able to draw a model for it to be able to help them make.
I think
and
our
it-
biggest challenge is students come in and they wanna use this stuff right away, and they just get something offline. We don't want that. Our main thing is you can print it if you can draw it, right? And this is kind of the premise behind all of our hands-on classes, robotics and woodworking, all of that. Yep, robotics, so we have these Vex kits, they're on the bottom, you guys are gonna be able to, you're gonna get to use a lot of this stuff, so that's why we're trying to get through this for you. Materials processing, I mean, you can talk to that.
Sure, I mean, it's just, first we teach them how to use everything safely, some point in their life, even if they don't do it as a career, somebody's gonna use a tool, and I like to make sure that they can use it well, yep. And then beyond that, it's not so much, so you learn to use the equipment safely, then it goes to the what can we do with that equipment, and that's where the problem solving and the just critical thinking come in. It's like, once you have these skills, how far can we take it? So every group is different, but we try to take it as far as we possibly can.
Yep, so discovering, there's 3 units in that, so we go from block-based coding, I've got an example for you guys to see, to Python to web design. And it's just those 3 things, and then that builds on, leads into the other classes that we offer. Python, yep, so this is all in multimedia, so yes, they can receive 3 college credits, it's $200. And there's other stipulations, like if you qualify for reduced lunch, they cover the cost, Sienna. And we already talked about this stuff, so I'm not gonna be broken. Then we take a step up, so there's Java and data structures, that is the next course, it's a 120 level course. It's a 4 credit, because technically it has a lab associated with it. They do spend a little bit more time, there's much more work to do. And this is mainly, there's not too much visual things, this is all data driven and very math based. So it's not very visual, but they do things like they develop, computer programs that will deal cards, but not like poker. It's like this little game. I don't even know. I had the card deck. It's called Blink. I don't know if anyone heard of it. I never heard of it until I went to Sienna. It's kind of fun. I don't know. Stuff like that. Doesn't matter. Now this. So this is something that we are super proud of. Do you want to do that first one? So Mr. Fedor was awarded right there in 2020. He was the Teacher of the Year by NYSEA, which is the New York State Technology Engineering Educators Association. This past year, we both were the recipients of the Program of Excellence Award for NYSEA. And then this year, we were actually nominated for the ITEA Program of Excellence. That is an international award. That's the International Technology Engineering Educators Association. So fingers crossed we can get that. I don't know. Hopefully,
And
I
one
believe
of
this.
them won't be canceled.
One of them
You'll
won't.
get to go to one.
Each one's been canceled.
Everyone's been canceled.
Sure. All right. And these are just more pictures of, kind of stuff we do. And all
That's
that
not a
good
picture.
stuff. That really threw me off. I was like, that is not supposed to be there. Yeah, from the STEAM day, we're on the radio, we do a bunch of cool stuff like that, and then a few pictures of students, doing the build and what they built and sitting on it. So that thing that they're sitting on is actually just cardboard, or corrugated, sorry. It's Peter almost just got it.
Board.
So it's corrugated board. They built that at the STEAM day, and then that was them testing it. I think it ended up holding, we went to the weight room and we just stacked plates on it. I think it ended up holding like 600 pounds, and then it finally broke. So it's cool.
Yeah, we try to give them a lot of different experiences, and we'd like to just keep giving them more. Thank everyone for their support. And if there's time, if you guys want to come over, and we have plenty of things to look at, play with, do.
Yeah, it's not a museum. You get to touch it.
Yeah, this is.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
With all everything that's going on, has there ever been talk about seeing for the school?
So we have the club, which last year was when it was started. I think COVID and everything, there wasn't that much involvement. We had like a solid 5 to 6 kids. This year, however, though, we do robotics, and then we are kind of trying to start. Some of the students can be like, we want to do esports. So combined, there's like 30 kids there every Wednesday for both things. So we are starting to do more. Last year, obviously, we just didn't have the numbers for it. And then this year, honestly, I was pleasantly surprised by it. So we're kind of working through and trying to get things off the ground on both ends.
And
kind
there's
of figure it out.
also, so yes, there could be a possibility for that. There's also a possibility they do drone racing contests with the company that we picked for the drones. So that might be something.
So we're there, just not there.
You're on your way.
Yes.
Yeah, it's great. Thought that has its stuff.
What's esports?
Esports, electronic sports. So it is video games, but it's not more. It's more than that. So you're in an environment where you're working with other students, and you have to usually it's task driven. So it's like 4 kids working together to complete something on there, and then you compete against other schools. So I don't know too much about it. I'm just big on listening. Students came to me like, hey, we want to do this. And kids don't usually do that, and when they do that, I'm like, hey, I'm all for it. So trying to figure that out. There's a bunch of school districts around that actually have varsity sports now that are esports teams. So we've really reached out to them and they've been helping us along.
If we could take, would it be agreeable, 10 minutes? If we need this-
However
take
long you
10
wanna give
minutes
us.
and invite the community and the board to take a look at what you brought here.
Sweet.
what you'll see there. Additionally, soon to come, I'll pass this around as well. This is the class link for parents that we've spoken of. As soon as we can get all of the emails at, let's call it the most accurate point possible in school tool, we could pull it and then have everything linked appropriately. Christina Gore is preparing the information to share with the public to set that all up. We don't imagine that it's going to take very long, but there's still a step or two. So again, I'll pass this around so that you can see what we're trying to emulate here is what the students have. One point of access for all apps necessary to be a part of your student's school experience. Okay? And then finally, one of the topics that came up at our last board meeting, there were some questions about our AP course offerings and also some of our dual enrollment college courses that we have. So we put together a small spreadsheet for you to take a look at, and I'll pass one in each direction. Probably one of the best figures that I found here in working with Mrs. Lenz from the high school regarding AP courses. We anticipate this year that there will be 239 AP exams administered. What that means for the number of students is not necessarily 239 because that would be a duplicated count. So right now, 170 is the number that we have enrolled as students in AP courses in our district. Now, additionally, we have quite a large amount here, in my opinion, of SUPA courses, SUNY Orange courses, Siena College courses that you've just heard of. We have relationships with Mount St. Mary College and also Corning Community College. And I did a 2-year comparison for you. So the load report here is over the course of 2 years, you'll see what we continued with again this year and what, due to what we would consider to be very low enrollment, what we took out of the course catalog for this year. However, we didn't abolish the courses. Our teachers are still credentialed to be adjunct professors, if you will. So I'll pass this around to both sides. If you have any questions, please let me know. And as we pass that around, that's it for me this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Next on the agenda, consent agenda. I need a motion. Shannon, Tom? Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education accepts the retirement of Sherry Racco, cook manager, effective November 21st, 2022. Be it further resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education approves the remainder of the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor? Opposed? Next, old business, no old business. New business. I need a motion to approve minutes. Shannon and Billy. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education approves the minutes for the October 7th, 2022 regular board meeting. All those in favor? Opposed? I need a motion to accept a donation for the class of 1963 scholarship. Shannon? Tom? Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education accepts a donation of $200 from Magna and Stephen Zemansky for the class of 1963 scholarship. All those in favor? Opposed? Did I skip one? I apologize. And I even attended this. 11.2, I needed a motion to approve entry of 2022 summer graduate. I have Brett and Billy. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education approves the entry of Mackenzie Bell, 2022 summer graduate, in the Board of Education minutes. All those in favor? Opposed? 11.4, I need a motion to accept donation of organ by Guy Gross. Shannon and Tom? Be it resolved, the Board of Education does hereby accept with appreciation, the donation of a Lowry, coronation organ by Guy Gross for use by the Goshen High School Music Department and students of the Goshen Central School District. All those in favor? Opposed? I need a motion to approve the corrective action plan for the Office of New York State Comptroller's Audit Report. I have Billy and Brett. Be it further resolved, the Board of Education approves the corrective action plan prepared by the district in response to the audit regarding the mental health training component of the New York State SAVE Act issued by the Office of New York State Comptroller in June 2022. All those in favor? Opposed? I need a motion to approve senior class trip to Orlando, Florida. I have Shannon and Tom. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education approves the high school senior class trip to Orlando, Florida from May 13th through May 16th, 2023. Be it further resolved, the board reserves the right to cancel or reschedule any school-sponsored trip or activity in the event of any emergency condition outside of the control of the school district in its sole discretion. All those in favor? Opposed? I need a motion to approve an agreement for Goshen High School Administrative Consultant. Shannon? Brett? Thanks. Be it resolved that the board hereby approves an agreement with Brent Rosenberger to serve as an administrative consultant for the purpose of administrative transition at Goshen High School, effective November 28th, 2022 through December 2nd, 2022, at a salary of $800 per diem. All those in favor? Opposed? I need a motion for the first reading and adoption of policy for school trips and policy for field trips. I have Billy and Tom. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education approves the first reading, waives the second reading, and readopts the following policies. Policy number 5750, school trips. Policy number 8460, field trips. All those in favor? Maureen, on the next point, it says info, discussion, policy updates. So they have that in their packets? Okay. 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 Okay, so it's for information purposes? Anyone have any questions about school facilities, materials, equipment, or timeout rooms? All right, next on the agenda is another privilege of the, oh, go ahead.
Just had a general question. Suddenly heard the speakers here. There was a point in the building use regarding general liability insurance. I certainly appreciate the elaboration on this policy. I think it makes a lot of sense. And I was curious if the required commercial general liability applied to all the different classification groups as defined, the Class 1, Goshen School District-based civic groups, Class 2, a club-based group, and 3, a nonprofit. I was curious if that was for all. I guess that question came to my mind when I thought about a booster club, which we want to ensure can use the facility, but may not have the specified insurance policy. So I was just curious how that.
So, Mr. Freeze, correct me if I'm wrong, but generally, all groups that come in from the outside that we do ask to have the proper insurance coverage just to protect all parties, both the group itself and the district at the same time. I know it's at an added cost, but there's been circumstances in the past where if a party is not properly insured, it can cause grave difficulties for both the district and the organization. So Mr. Freeze, you usually collect that from them before we sign off on the facilities form, correct?
And typically, the policy's not all that much.
That was my only question.
Any other questions?
Next on the agenda, privilege of the floor. Any board member issues or committee reports?
I just have two comments. So my first one is definitely related to a couple of speakers we had tonight. Earlier tonight, we had Ms. Mancuso, Ms. Leviano, and Mrs. Lucy mentioned something that just kind of stood out to me, and I understand what they're saying. I'll give you an example. During the last hold in place, I get a text, hey, can somebody pick me up? And it goes back to the word that was used earlier was desensitized. I'm like, what do you mean, can you be picked up? I definitely feel like at least one of my children is completely desensitized to the safety measures that we have in place. I don't know how to fix it. I don't know what the answer is to that. But I do hear that, and I understand where that's coming from. Last year, we had several situations. This year, a couple of situations that, again, we might not have control over it. I know that the administration is doing everything. I'm glad to hear that they're going to the tabletop. I've participated in those before. I think they are great exercises. They work with the law enforcement during those exercises. Extremely happy to hear that they're going to see that. I don't know if there is anything we can do as far as working with the students to check in with them, to maybe reiterate the importance of why we're holding these systems in place, why we have hold in place, why we have lockout drills, how something might happen in one building, but all 4 buildings might be on a lockdown. Again, this is just a comment, just an observation. And you know, after the last situation, you know, I saw it where typically I like to think that my kid's like on it, and it's just like, yeah, I don't know, we're going to be in this room for another 5-6 hours. I don't have time to be, you know, I ran out of dance moves. It was something, you know, like a joke like that. So again, just some way where we can maybe reiterate the importance of these drills and letting the students know about them. And then the second thing I wanted to bring up is really more sports related. And I'm sure things are on the, you know, on the horizon. But one thing that stood out with me back in September, and I know I probably have mentioned this to 1, 2, or 20 people. I was at a football game, JV, 50 kids. That's awesome. You know, 50 kids playing football. Probably never had that. And I'm speaking to one of my friends and his daughter's on the JV team. And my wife asks her friend next to her, you know, oh, hey, you know, how's it going? She's like, oh, well, I was cut. And I understand. You can only have so many people on a team before it becomes, you know, just a miserable situation for everyone. And then she proceeded to tell me that it was about, you know, somewhere in the vicinity, again, coming from a student, perception is everything. But in her mind, there's about 40 kids trying out. They take 14. And then I hear that the same thing happened in modified. And I'm thinking about it, it sat with me for about 2 months now. And I'm just thinking to myself, okay, like, wasn't the sport for you? But then I started thinking, how many other athletes might not have an opportunity to participate in something. And I understand that you can't just create a whole bunch of different sports all seasons, because then you just become saturated, and it might not be, and there's a costs involved with every sport that you put in. But I would be interested to see if, moving forward, I'm not sure we'd be able to recoup those numbers. I'm sure it's somewhere, if you went to the coaches, about how many students wanted to play a sport, whether it be a JV sport or modified sport, specifically because those sports tend to have a little bit more leeway, because you're learning, as opposed to a varsity sport where it's much more competitive. But as we move into the winter months, and in November, there's going to be tryouts, I'm just curious to know, do we have 30 extra male or female athletes that want to play a sport, but that's just not their sport, and they're only trying out for that sport because they want to be involved, and we don't have anything else for them? So, not saying I'm looking to create anything out there that that doesn't need to be created, but really I'm just looking to see if, should we be providing other options? And we're going to be moving into the budget season, where if we're seeing that we have a lot of student athletes that just don't have those opportunities, because let's face it, when kids are playing sports, they're a lot more involved, creates school spirit, academics increase, they just feel part of something. And looking at, some of the situations we've gone through, and kind of, some of the situations I talked about in my first point, these safety things, let's keep the kids busy. Let's give them more opportunities. Let's expose them to more role models after school. So if that's something that we could do, maybe as we move into the winter months, not looking to create anything, but at least collect the data and say, hey, listen, 5 kids get cut from a team, obviously, we don't need another team for, but if we're seeing a need out there, and maybe there is something where, like in the spring, some schools have a field hockey team. Maybe field hockey would speak to some people who aren't soccer athletes or volleyball athletes. So it's just something that, it's, like I said, it's been on my mind for about 2 months. And as we're approaching a new season, I think it would be a great time to start collecting that data, just to see if we should be looking for better opportunities for our kids. So,
if I can, on a side note on that, what I've observed myself is, and Mr. St. Lawrence has definitely been trying to work with it. He's new in the position, but a lot of those kids that were cut were due to lack of equipment. We borrowed from youth football, who was gracious enough to give, and I'm only talking about football and wrestling because my kids are involved, so you go with what you're familiar with. But that was very frequent going on. What you have is, they literally just hadn't had the equipment for the kids, and then the equipment we have, there's duplicate numbers on the field. They're just trying to do what they can. You have 2 26s too. Well, something. You see the other teams going out there. Mr. St. Lawrence tried to get equipment and try to get it, not his own fault that it wasn't in time, but we have kids that only have one uniform, or other uniforms that are damaged that I had to repair myself to go just so my kid could play. I think we need to invest a little more also, which will give some opportunity, because I can guarantee you, that's talking to the coaches, that's part of it. They just don't have the equipment to outfit the kids, and they have to cut because they can't give them equipment.
right. And again, those large numbers are great, but we have to make sure we're allocating the money. So
It's got to be more sports than just that.
I have something too, if that's okay. I also share some of the concerns that were discussed at Privilege of the Floor, and really about that desensitization of our kids. And I just wonder too, I'm sure I'm not alone as a parent constantly talking about what you risk with TikTok challenges and jokes and these pranks, and how important it is that they're hearing it from all fronts. And I know discipline for students, that's an individual, it's confidential. But I think it's important that the kids know what they're putting in jeopardy and what they're risking from a school standpoint, that a lot of the time kids just don't see anything, so they think nothing happens after you pull a prank or something. But I think it's important that they're hearing this is what happens. Like, this is what you're risking. This is what you're putting in jeopardy. For those kids that really just don't get what a big deal it is. You know, so that's something that I just kind of wanted to bring up. I'm happy that there's going to be a safety committee coming up. I'm really looking forward to see what's coming from there, especially after going through these last incidents. I'm sure there's a lot of things in retrospect now that we can do differently and always improve and do better. So, but I also share those same concerns about, you know, the desensitization that I do think that is probably happening.
I think a question was asked why we're not doing it, I know that my wife actually gave one here when she was a county attorney that did juvenile prosecution. I think that's been several years. She no longer does juvenile prosecution, but there is someone that probably would be available. Back before it was more sexting and cyberbullying. Now we're going to school threats. I'm sure that they could, if they don't already have a curriculum, put something together and try to come in. Maybe we can talk about that to let the kids know what the ramifications are, and they can be severe depending on age.
And I think you brought up a couple of really good points. So I think.
And it's at the discretion of a judge. So even though they do get arrested, like they might arrest them, it's at the discretion of the school if they call the police to have them arrested. And if they are, how they're prosecuted. Because the judge can say, well, they're gonna go home and they put them on a probation, or they can say they have to stay home for a week. So the problem is not desensitization, like they're getting desensitized. Yeah, my daughter didn't even get phased that it happened. And I'm like, the one day that they're all like, oh, it's just a lockdown, could be the last day that they're just sitting in their class and we don't know. We got an officer in the front and that's fantastic, thank God. But if it's more than one person coming in, they're not gonna be protected that well. The biggest issue is kids see that nothing happens. Like my daughter's like, oh, nothing happened because the girl that did it, the freshman, because everybody, it like you said, moms at Goshen.
Respectfully interrupt you. I don't want to talk about.
No,
specific
it is
students.
important. This is why everybody's
No, I do
here.
understand
And you know
that, but
what?
we are
What
talking
we
about
need,
minors and students.
minors and
Do ask your
students,
perspective.
it's
Please
important to
refrain
know
from
that
I know.
people send our kids, we send our kids to school every day. And it's to the point where
And if I
every
can
day
also-
we're
I
texting
understand.
our kids to see how they're doing, but the biggest thing for you guys is you wanna get through the agenda, you wanna do robotics, but the biggest issue here is not all the great things, it's what we're gonna lose. You won't have kids to give this greatness to if our kids can't be in school and they're not there. We need to know, when is the police gonna be here, so we can talk with the police and find out, okay, there has to be consequences.
And I know, and there is
That has to be talked
proper
about.
channels for us to do that
And
because in this.
20 emails in and no one, I haven't got
This forum
response.
right now, it's just not the right.
But when is it gonna be the right one?
So
when is the right one?
That was gonna be my question. Is there,
Yeah,
can we have a town hall where we can interact and have conversations like
We've all
this?
been asking. We've emailed many times and a lot of people, we don't get answers. They just tell us they'll get back to us.
Well, you're dealing with different municipalities. So if
We're
you're talking
reaching out
about the
to
town
whoever we
hall, then
can.
it's the Goshen Town Hall, and I don't have jurisdiction over that. This is the school board, and right now what we are going through is how can we, as a school district, help protect the students?
I haven't
It's
heard
terminology
that.
It's terminology town hall.
Have like a public
Okay, fair
conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody here has written to Dr. Coates, and I appreciate you getting back to me the same day, I really do. But we all have the same exact question, because we're all talking about it, and the answer we get back is, we'll talk about it. Well, when? Like, how many more times do we have to talk about it before we actually get to hear from parents? I appreciate everybody sitting here, but these are the people that are gonna make a difference. These are the people that go home to their kids. I want to hear this type of exchange, not the rest of this, and we've not been given an opportunity to have that. We've asked for it to be in the classroom, at the school level, let the kids hear what's gonna happen to them. You have dreams of college? Sorry, you send that TikTok, you're not going. You have
I would
parents.
respectfully say that as a school district in conjunction with parents, I'm a parent too.
I know.
In conjunction with parents, that yes, that is probably the best direction.
But we've been asking for it for weeks and we still haven't.
I would like to say at this point that we have a safety committee meeting scheduled for this Wednesday. We do have other stakeholders in that. Perhaps that their future plan would be to include parents in that.
Why is it a future plan? Like, that should be on the books and scheduled like now.
We've had what, 4 lockdowns, 5?
Yeah.
And we're in November, September, October, not even, we're into the second week of November.
You're talking now scheduling into like January, February. That's too late.
Who knows what's gonna happen by that time? The kids will just keep losing time, that's all.
And I can say, and I'm truly not copping out, but I am one of 7 on a board. I can't make that decision. It has to be a board decision.
You guys can make a decision to make a meeting for all of us, that we
And
talk
it's
and not
something
you
that I'd like to have
guys.
conversations with the administration of the school district in all sense.
But how come it hasn't been a conversation already?
I can't speak to that. I truly can't.
I mean, you have 10 people that have written letters. I know probably 50 others that have. Why is it taking, we don't have anything on the agenda. We have nothing that's giving us a forum to say anything. And I didn't say anything here because I wasn't even sure if I could make the meeting, but I'm sitting here quiet for the last 2 hours. And I'm frustrated.
No, I honestly, I share your frustration. What I can say is that there are proper procedures to follow, and please hear me out. I'm a parent too. I understand exactly where you're coming from. And if that's something that the community wants, if the parents want, then absolutely.
But how many more letters is it gonna take to get that? Because we've
I
all
will
written
also
in
say
saying
too
that.
that the district is doing a lot. They are doing a lot with all of what is occurring in conjunction with the village police. Brett sits on the safety committee. There is so much going on simultaneously and in motion at the same time.
So
But
maybe.
see, nothing's
the district
communicated
is.
to us,
Right.
and that's the
To your
problem.
point.
So tell us, what is
Dr.
it?
Coates, if we can communicate that, a lot of information has been communicated on our website. Perhaps we need to do it a different way.
Yeah, for sure.
Because there have been a lot of committees. We've been doing social emotional learning in all different venues with speakers, with the children, with our admins, with our teachers. There has been a lot of things that are happening all at once. And you have to also be mindful too that we are dealing with minors. There are laws, there are things in place where we cannot just publicly post individual names.
We're not,
No one's
nobody is
asking
asking
for that at all.
Neither can law enforcement.
But
I
they
think
need
as
to be
parents,
consequences.
we're
If a
just-
kid says he's gonna
You have
shut
to
up the
say,
school, they need
please.
to know that they should be suspended, the parent should be held liable. Cause you could say, oh, there's things happening, there's 100 things happening in your background, right?
I will finish
But-
with this.
but
There is a
there's-
difference
there's
between
not.
what the school district can do in their code of conduct and what the police do.
Okay, but
There's-
tell
there's
us
a line
what they're
in
doing,
that.
that's what we need to
And
know.
right, and
So
absolutely.
if somebody says they're gonna go and do something, do they get punished? Do they get expelled? Is a parent held liable? Like, what's gonna happen?
I will say that we do have a meeting agenda, and we do have a time frame. I really do. I share with your concerns. But I do need to move forward with the meeting. This is not the proper forum.
This should have been that meeting.
What is the proper form?
Then-
This should have
then
been
you
that
can come
meeting.
back for privilege of the floor at this point. I apologize.
So
I don't-
3
I don't
weeks?
have much to say.
We'll probably have to wait till the new year, she said there's a lot of
I have a question that I
holidays.
think will help give some clarification. The safety committee, is that public information of who sits on that committee?
Absolutely.
What is the meetings, are they posted where parents can go and attend these meetings?
I've volunteered when I came on the board to sit on the safety committee, as does Brett. So we're 2 members that do sit on that meeting. Personally, I'm taking off work early to be there. I followed the lead of Dr. Coates when he was able to get all the official information together, as much as I know, as a parent and a board member, with all the things that happened in all these events. So I know that there was a lot of information collected, so I'm looking forward to that meeting.
But is it open to the
It
parents?
wouldn't be open for the parents for a reason. You have law enforcement from all different disciplines that are there.
Uh-huh.
And God forbid there is an active incident, there's certain protocols and procedures that they should only know. Not someone else that could take advantage of those procedures.
Well, we don't want that. We wanna know if a kid says something, are they gonna be repercussions? Are there
That's different than
consequences?
safety.
That's
Safety
what
is
we're talking
literally-
about,
the safety
Lee.
committee is literally for the planning, God forbid that law enforcement or emergency personnel have to respond to an incident, that they can work together for the safety of the kids, but they have a procedure that is for them that the public doesn't know for a reason. It's for the safety of the kids. What you're asking is totally different.
So
what's the answer?
Two parts to this. One, will that committee be reporting at your BOE meetings or what's happening in those meetings to get the minutes? And number 2, where would be the appropriate place for parents to go to have a committee meeting about the issue of safety?
More than privilege of the floor, have it on agenda. How do you do that?
To have it as a committee, not as
Instead
a
of going
board
in
meeting.
circles.
I can say that we do have discussion about what happens on the safety committees. And quite frankly, I would have to find out what the proper forum is for that. I don't have the answer.
I can't believe that. And all this time, there were 4 issues in September and no one has that information. You had to imagine that everybody coming tonight has that same fear. Is my kid coming home? Because every day, literally, since September, that's the fear I have. And if it's in the high school, are they gonna close GIS? Is SAS having something? You know, like you at CJ Hooker, you're worried because you don't know if one incident at one school is gonna affect and trickle down, because the poor babies, God forbid, like if they were on lockdown, those little toddlers, not even toddlers, 5 and 6, they're still babies, like they don't understand what's happening. But you have the other kids that have anxiety already because of COVID and now they have this, like, we need some kind of answers, because like you said, there's gonna be an incident and I pray it never happens. They're not gonna be prepared. And they have to know that there's a consequence. That's all we need to know is if they act out, if they need help, what's gonna happen? There has to be something like, hey, you won't go to college if they see that you did this. Hey, they see that you did this. Maybe give them community service, make something for the parents like that.
I can say that we do have a code of conduct and that is.
But it's not
just a code
working.
of conduct.
But you're telling us to go
Because
to
as
the
a
proper
parent,
channels, but you're not telling us what the proper channels are.
I can find out for you, I will tell you, I will find out for you if there is a proper forum.
Because I think
for-
everyone here would take advantage of that
Just
if we
don't
knew
put it
where
on the
was.
website. Can you like send it out to us in another way? Because relying
And
on
not
us.
something that's gonna be 6 months from now.
Yeah. Relying on the website is not the best thing, I think, for all, we could
And
probably
you're
all
lucky,
agree.
you're lucky that we're here because we care.
Honestly, I mean, I share your concerns, I truly do, but I also wanna leave you with this, that the district is not doing nothing.
Oh, no, I don't
And
think
I
anyone's
think that
saying
maybe
that.
what I'm hearing from you is that maybe we need to do a better job communicating it.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So absolutely, we can work on doing that. And then I will find out what the proper forum is.
Yeah, that's all. I think that's it. And I think Brett, your point was really valid. There are 2 different sides to the safety thing. I don't ever want to sit in on that meeting because I shouldn't. It's not my expertise. It's not something for me. But this side of the equation, we need a process.
Yes.
We need a meeting. We need the ability for every one of these voices to be heard. And if it
Parents
takes
just wanna
6
be
hours,
heard.
it takes 6 hours.
Right, we wanna be heard. It's
And our
emotional
kids
contact.
should have that ability as well.
And
There
as
should be.
parents, right, like, this is traumatizing for us, right? Like,
So
we're
imagine
worried about our
kids.
kids.
And our kids should have it too. I mean, like my son,
Some of our kids
I
are
picked my son up
traumatized
from
and
the
the school
dance
knows
and he
that
goes,
and the
I don't wanna
school
go to
doesn't
school
follow
one
it.
day.
Right.
My kid's a boy, like did not wanna go to school on Monday. And I had nothing to tell him. And I have to say though, the incident that happened at the middle school, at least the conversation I had with my son and his 3 friends that I picked up that night, which by the way, I got there before the police got there. Cause it came trickling down from kids having their phones, which please don't take them away, cause it's the only thing that we have right now. But I arrived before the police got there. I grabbed any kid that I recognized and threw them in my car. Cause I had no idea what was going on. And when I had all the kids there and then all of the stuff kept coming out saying that the kids had been, charges had been filed against them. Those 3 boys were sitting in my house, at least for a little bit of time said, okay. When they have no understanding of what's happening after that, they have no idea if the threat is still there. They have no idea if that kid is, and we're not talking names, they had no idea who it was. But they understood that publicly there was something that was done. And I think that, getting back to the communication, that needs to happen across the board. Whoever is making these threats, internal or external, what is happening from a punishment standpoint? That's just something we need to know.
We'll move on and look at maybe having someone talk to the kids. But I'm just gonna end with this, the punishment, and I've heard you say punishment, we have to say that's not in the school's hands, that's not in the police hands. In some respects, it's not even in the prosecutor's hands. New York state law states that they first go to probation, they have a probation intake. Probation has the chance to first take it on pretty much any case and decide whether they wanna keep it internal, and it never even hits family court. Dr. Coates, no one has the ability to override that. So some of this, that your frustrations are not here, then
But shouldn't there be follow
vote
through?
and change, and you gotta change New York's mind, but that's not here.
But do they?
But what we can change, I
How
think,
long
is that
is the
we
kid
have a
out
conversation
for?
about having kids.
Kid says they're shooting up the school. How long is this person out for? Out of school.
They're not.
That's not.
They don't have
How
to be.
long? We're in the code of conduct.
It's
We're
based on a fight.
based on the code of conduct, but Where in the code of conduct does it say it? Like,
Well,
is
we're
there,
gonna move on.
is there,
This one, I
no,
think
no,
we're talking more about specific
Is there
incident
rubric?
that is
No,
too
no.
close to
This
what
is
was
many
occurred.
incidents, it's not one, four so far.
is there a rubric that puts together, somebody says gives a threat? Because then there's kids in the school that worry, where is this person that made this threat? Are they back?
They are back, they're not,
So
the
in
prosecutors and
in
judges are
relation
not.
to the code of conduct, any student that has a serious incident like this goes to a superintendent's hearing. The superintendent's hearing is held to convene whether a student would be suspended for more than 5 days. Anytime that there is discipline more than 5 days, it must go to a superintendent's hearing. So I can tell you, all of these incidents have gone to a superintendent's hearing and not violate a student's rights by telling you the exact discipline of a student.
So
I
had
will
a,
end at that point, Tom, respectfully.
I wanted to add something to the original board comments.
Thank
That's
you.
all.
Thank you.
It's separate and parallel here.
Thank you.
So I'm glad, Billy, you had brought up that point, and this falls in line with a few of the things we've heard regarding our students feeling desensitized, and then the point about discipline. So comment, more for Dr. Coates. We talk a lot about safety here. We have our meeting coming up Wednesday. I'm very happy about that. And the comment that I wanted to make at the beginning of this conversation was, I think it's as equally as important for us to continue to consider our students' social emotional needs through this. I heard a few comments about anxiety. It was actually the word I was going to bring up. Fear, and we have this running parallel at the same time. So we're going to work very hard for safety, and I know that there have already been some measures in place, but I just ask as a comment to just keep pushing on those lines for any of our students, to let them know that the channels are there through the guidance, through, any other programs that we need to be able to offer them. Because these are anxious times for our kids, so let's, focus on that social emotional aspect for all those kids that have to sit in the building every day, as much as we focus on taking that data from all the appropriate parties, the state police, the sheriffs, everyone, the Goshen police, to work on safety. So that was my first comment, and that was coming ahead. I actually did have a second comment. It's totally off this topic. And it's minor. It doesn't have to be answered, but the policies were up for our second reading tonight and approval, and I voted yes to approve them. So it's just a little nuance. I was just curious, one of the policies, 5750, that talks about school trips, talks about participation in athletic championships event. And actually Odyssey was brought up earlier tonight, so it made me just think, this is minor, right? Should the title of that be athletic and scholastic championship events? Is there a separate policy for that? I wasn't sure. How would teams like Odyssey of the Mind or Science Olympiad tie into that? If they did make a state event championship or national, would that fall under the automatic approval, or would they have to come to the approval as well? So that was just a separate minor thing of that.
I think the more important piece, rather than looking at the second athletic championship, is whether the trip is overnight or not. Honestly, the Mind, Science Olympiad, and travel, I think by default they would come to this policy because they are overnight trips.
So that would then
typically our
cover
athletics
them, not the nuance of the name athletic championship.
If athletics get to
Right, to be an
regional or state competition, they can. The board can go back at any time and modify its own policy.
Again, that was just a small thing. I'm all for this. Yes, but I was just a little nuance. Those are my only two comments.
Silenced. Thank you seriously though for coming this evening. Next on the agenda is executive session. I need a motion for executive session. Shannon and Brett. Be it resolved, Board of Education will enter into executive session with the intent not to reconvene the business portion of the meeting for discussions related to the employment history of a particular person or persons. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That concludes the meeting for this evening.